Hello and welcome to What Makes America Tick. And I'm your host, Congressman Troy Carter. And I proudly represent one of the best places in the world, Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District. Join me as we dive into an engaging conversation and answer the question, what makes America tick? We're so happy today to have an incredible guest. Today we have Dr. Maurice G. Scholas, who is a doctor, medical doctor, a PhD on the show, someone that is a powerhouse in both medicine and advocacy. He's a physician, entrepreneur, problem solver who wears many hats and wears them well. He's the principal at Scholas Medical Consulting, where he tackles complex operational challenges in healthcare systems across our country. But his work doesn't stop there. Dr. Scholas is also nationally recognized as an expert in pediatric rehabilitation medicine, with a deep focus on children with special needs. And we have a lot of that.
Yes.
Born in Baton Rouge and now based in New Orleans, Dr. Scholas has built a career at the intersection of clinical excellence and community impact. He earned both his MD and PhD from Harvard University, trained at top institutions like Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, and has served as senior medical director at multiple leading children's hospitals. Alongside his medical work, he leads with heart, volunteering, mentoring, and advocating for equity through roles such as chair of the board of National Medical Association and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Clinical Scholar. That's a lot of work. And when he's not leading in medicine or policy, he's part of the rich fabric of New Orleans and our great culture. Recently being now elected as King-elect Athena for the 2026 Mardi Gras season. Dr. Scholas hasn't just treat patients. He builds better systems, uplifts communities, and leads with a purpose, and recognizes the rich culture and the fabric of what Louisiana and New Orleans is. Brother, thank you for being here with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's an honor when we think about the breadth of what you do. Obviously, an incredibly educated man at some of the best schools in the country. And we're blessed to have you here among us. And you haven't lost the common touch. You haven't lost the ability to mix it up a little bit. You don't live in an ivory tower where your accolades, your degrees, and all of the honors that you've won, earned, hasn't changed who you are.
Now I live right here in the Mary.
right here in the Mary. Tell me a little bit about your remarkable journey.
You know, I decided I wanted to be a doctor when I was 6. I don't know where that came from. I'm a first-generation doctor. We didn't even have a regular physician we went to growing up. We went to the clinic and got the care that's being provided through the Medicare Medicaid program. And over the years, I looked at a program on PBS. It was called So You Want to Be a Doctor. And it followed the lives of medical students.
Wait, and let me digress there a second.
Yes.
The very PBS that this big ugly bill is threatening to take away.
So it's incredible to me the things that made me not just Southern University born and bred, but Harvard trained and educated, were things like PBS, things like public assistance programs. All those things were integral to me becoming the adult that I am and able to contribute to society in the way that I do.
Well, what makes you tick? This show is What Makes America Tick. What makes you tick?
My purpose is curating joy and elevating excellence. And what I really like is I like the fact that you don't have to choose here in New Orleans. I don't have to choose to be that hoity-toity guy with all these degrees or a member of Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club. I get to be both. Yeah. And which of those two things is most important? It depends on who I'm talking to. That's what makes me tick, that I get to be both.
Well, let me dig a little deeper into that. What makes you tick, and talk about what makes America tick.
Yes.
And talk about some of the pressing issues that we see facing America now.
Yes.
We know that mental health is a major issue. I'm fortunate enough to co-chair the Men's Health Caucus, taking over from my dear friend, former Congressman Donald Payne, who unfortunately left this earth to be in heaven. But he did a great work. Let's talk about the epidemic that we see,
Sure.
the issues that we see on the street with our young people who we sometimes see on the street corner talking to themselves, shadow boxing, struggling with obviously something. But it's not the end of the world when that happens.
No.
With treatment and care and counseling, people can have a normal life.
So with mental health, there's lots of factors that make the existence of mental health issues more profound and more difficult to manage. One is access to good quality care and therapy. We have a wonderful network of Black and brown and multicultural doctors here in South Louisiana that some communities just don't have. So when it comes time to talking to someone that relates to you and understands your journey, that's the first part, access. The second part that's really important is managing the stressors in life that don't have to be. No one should wonder where their next meal is coming from. No one should struggle figuring out how they're going to be sheltered from the elements. No one should be isolated and floating alone in this world. Those basic needs, if they're not met, can take someone with a manageable mental health problem and make it 1,000 times worse. So when I talk about how we're going to make the overall health of America better, the overall mental health of America better, it doesn't just involve health care, but it involves just basic human dignity and decency.
So mental health, we know, is a major issue.
Yes.
We see it manifesting itself because of the lack of resources that is now coming home to roost. We're seeing the manifestation of years and years and years of neglect
Absolutely.
of providing resources. We're trying to turn the corner, then we hit a wall.
Yes.
But we're not going to quit. We're not going to give up. We're going to continue to fight to make sure that we have fair access to medical health, to preventive care. So let's talk about preventive care.
Sure.
Let's talk about,
Sure.
In the aftermath of COVID, we learned a whole lot, didn't we?
Well, even before COVID, we're celebrating 20 years of Katrina this year. And what Katrina taught me, two things. One, it taught me how to text message. Because I never really text messaged before that. It's a small way of sort of connecting with, communicating with people. And number two, it taught me the importance of an electronic health record. Why is that important? Because what I know about you as your provider shouldn't be limited to my office. It should be available to what other healthcare providers are seeing. It should be available to you wherever you live in the country. It should be available to you whatever time of day or night you need it. Those basic things came out of tragedy, but really underscored what we needed to make sure people are healthy. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. Everybody doesn't have to be able-bodied and quote-unquote perfect to contribute. One of the most remarkable people I know is a wheelchair user. And I think it's a shame when we don't have infrastructures developed to make sure that bright light and talent doesn't have access, physical access to the same rooms I get to come into, because his contribution can't be understated, or her contribution can't be understated. When you talk about preventive care and you talk about access to care, we can do things that make people live better and healthier lives, that keep us from having to take care of them when those better and healthier lives aren't available to them.
So how do you do that? Because there's somebody invariably that's going to be listening to this.
Yes.
Who may be that very same person you mentioned, that doesn't have access to a supportive family, that doesn't have access to care. How do we reach them and help direct them through what could be a very challenging maze of bureaucracy to get them to some level? We funded 988.
Yes.
988 is a 24-hour call that you can pick up the phone and talk to somebody.
Yes.
Beyond that, people are out there struggling. How do we reach the people that seemingly are unreachable,
Yes.
that need the help the most?
So as a doctor who is both a clinician and a scientist, I believe in science, number one. But when you're talking about helping and aiding and partnering with people, you have to lead with humanity. We can't really talk down to people about themselves and their health. And what I say to my patients and my families is that I'm an expert in physical medicine and rehab. I'm an expert in people that are living with acquired and congenital physical disabilities. But you're an expert in yourself, and you're an expert in your children. So let's partner as experts. You know how that feels different than someone saying paternalistically to you, I know better, let me tell you how to do your life. I think so. The first thing is it starts with leading with humanity.
And leading with humanity is something that we don't see enough of.
Oh, no.
We see great challenges in our community. You are a part of a number of think tanks. I've been in your presence for various committees and task force and the like. Tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you're doing that's not necessarily connected with your practice,
Sure.
but it's making a difference in our community. People need to know that there are people that look like us,
Yes.
that have been educated, who are doing well, but never left the roots and are going back to help.
So I'm going to tell you, the first thing you have to do is show up. I tell all my friends, if you want to make a difference, be present and let everybody know your story. I refuse to be erased. And what does that mean? And I'm going to tell you an intersection of sort of culture and practice. One of my patients is a third generation YMO. So Young Men Olympus is the oldest social aid and pleasure club we have here in New Orleans. Hundreds of years of legacy. His granddad paraded, his dad paraded, and he has a cerebral palsy condition that makes his legs not work very well. And his mother was very concerned that her son, this third generation traditional New Orleanian, was not going to be able to participate in the things his parents and grandparents did. When she talked to me about that, the look of relief on her face, when she knew I understood the importance of those social touchstones and the importance of him being a part of the legacy of his family, made her believe me and work with me more as her clinician. So it might have been the fact that I have a strong educational background that made her say he's a good doctor, but I'd argue that she felt I was a good doctor of her son because I understood the cultural norms and the cultural things that were relevant to their family.
How big a deal is that?
That's
because we know
huge
that particularly in our community, we have more people that are in need versus those that are the clinicians who are those that can help.
Yes.
So when you have that level of imbalance, listen, it's not a secret, it's not favoritism.
Yes.
But people are more comfortable with people
They can
who
relate to.
they can relate to.
Yes.
Rather it's cultural or the color of your skin or the language you speak or geographically where you're from, people have to be able to open up to tell you where it hurts.
Yes.
And they've got to trust you.
They've got to trust you, and there has to be some sort of commonality. And I think that's where I think us as professionals, you as a politician, me as a community guy, me as a physician, we need to put ourselves in the lens where we don't just relate from a position of authority, but we relate from a position of humility, and we relate from a position of collaboration. When I talk to this patient and his family about how they can participate in the second line parade, we hold big pallets when we parade, the big fans. Well, we made his pallet his cane. So he didn't feel like he looks different than the other people out there because he needed something to steady himself when he came out and did that beautiful footwork in his own way. And I think those are the quote unquote DEI solutions that everybody wants to vilify. His solution to make him a functional parader was to make sure he had a walking stick or a cane that actually took some of his weight and made him more stable on his feet so he wouldn't fall. We made that walking stick look like everyone else's. And so it wasn't that we made a special exception for him, or he didn't have to walk and parade, or he didn't have to do anything. We made the parading experience work for what his limitations were and work in a way that respected the culture.
Fitting into what their world is instead of having them fit into yours.
Perfect. I love what you said.
Basic way of saying we care. We don't want to intimidate you. So when I often talk about the check engine light.
Yes.
Because I use this as an analogy when I tell people that being preventive in healthcare versus being curative in healthcare. Preventive is a whole lot cheaper.
It is a whole lot cheaper.
And I say, when we drive our fancy BMWs, our Mercedes, our Yukons, or what have you.
I'm an electric car guy.
Got your electric car, you got your electric car, and you're proud of it.
I am.
But if that check engine light came on and said there's something wrong, it may not tell you what, but there's something wrong, Doc. Most times you pull that baby over, you find the next, the first garage or repair shop. But as people, as humans, our body gives us check engine light oftentimes too.
Yes.
And we often ignore it. Sometimes that persistent pain in your arm that won't go away, that headache that keeps coming back.
It's something.
Doc, it's telling us something, isn't it?
It is. And I'm going to make a special time to talk to my black women out there. You all are so busy lifting everybody else up and taking care of everybody else, they miss their own check engine lights. So I want to remind those people out there, especially those that are taking care of kids and their parents in that sandwich generation,
Yep.
that you need to check on your own check engine light. Secondly, to my guys out there, it's no sign of weakness when you go and take care of yourself.
Physically or mentally.
Both. Because you can't, like the lifeguards say, rescue somebody else when you're drowning.
Or like the airline pilot says,
Put
your mask on first.
Absolutely. You know, I want whoever's hearing this podcast to know that we see you, we're with you, and together there's nothing we can't fix.
And you're not alone.
You're not alone.
And it's okay to sometimes not be okay. So when we talk about getting tested, you know, particularly men, right?
Yes.
We have this big boys don't cry, suck it up. Oh, be a macho man. Come on, man, you can take it. No, man, it's okay to cry.
It's okay.
It's okay to hurt. It's okay to talk about it. You know, when I was a little boy, my grandmother would ask us, "What's wrong, Troy? You feeling blue?" Which was a way of saying, how are you emotionally? Now we don't ask that question. We leave our kids to Instagram and
Sort it
the
out on their own.
internet,
But
and
I'm gonna
looking
push back
at
a little bit, though.
the games on your phone instead of communicating.
So people create what they don't have. And if we had places and spaces where people would feel comfortable talking one-on-one with another person, there wouldn't be folks on Instagram talking to the world.
How do we do that, though, Doc?
You got to be present. You start with showing up. You start with demystifying the process of getting help. And that means taking away the stigma and making sure that people with the expertise are not just available, but available in a way that feels accessible.
But there's a person out there right now, they're stuck in traffic, they're driving in, or they're home, and they're listening to this podcast. And what do you say to the listener who may have an issue themselves, or may have a friend who has an issue? How do you break down that barrier of, man, there's nothing wrong with you, until you don't do something about what's wrong with you?
I tell people to start with what you have. If you have an employee assistance program at your job, you already paid for that. Use it. If you have a church home where they have pastoral services available to you, reach out to your pastoral care team. Use them. If you have good friends that really are there for you, not just for the fun times, but also for the times when you're going through something, lean into them. And none of those three things are mutually exclusive. So just because you go to a therapist doesn't mean you don't believe in your God. Just because you lean into your friends doesn't mean you don't take advantage of what's available at your church. I think it's an all is available type thing. So if somebody listening in this car, I'd say, whatever's in front of you, start with that. And if it doesn't work for you, we keep going until we find something that does.
Absolutely. We are now going through in Washington a major issue with, regardless of if you're Republican or Democrat, this isn't political, this is policy.
Yes.
When we talk about cutting Medicaid, challenging Medicare, taking away SNAP benefits, we know that these things affect black, white, Republican, Democrats all over the country. Right here in Louisiana, nearly 50% of the people in Louisiana have some shape or form or fashion dependent on Medicaid. As someone who lives this life,
yes,
no politics, just facts. How does that impact when you have literally thousands and tens of thousands of people in Louisiana that may be taken off the roll?
I will say, number one, I wouldn't be here if there was no Medicaid. That's how I got health care and stayed healthy enough to learn in school and be present and make something out of myself. Number two, if you don't have Medicare and Medicaid, you don't have hospitals in your rural communities. What does that mean? Someone that has a stroke or a heart attack, and where they could travel 7 minutes to get care, they'd have to travel 45 minutes to get care, and then you can't get the same things that could save you from death or save you from permanent disability. And the third thing that people don't really think about is those are the programs that fund the future. So if you want to go to medical school and are fortunate enough to get into and finish the process, when you get done, we do on-the-job training. It's called internship, residency, and fellowship. That's paid for through Medicare and Medicaid funding. So when you do something like cut Medicaid and Medicare, number one, you deny care to people that need it that are poor, and they're gonna die. Number two, you deny the infrastructure to the people that are in our communities that need to access care through rural hospitals and hospitals that are safety net. And number three, you handicap the system's ability to produce the future. So I love my job as a physician, and at 55 years old, I think I have many, many more years, but I don't have infinity. Somebody needs to be trained to come behind me. So I don't think there's any chunk of our population that's expendable. I don't want to give people away because they're people. And I think that when we cut Medicaid and Medicare, the way they're talking about cutting it, we give away people. And that's just not acceptable to me.
You mentioned rural hospitals.
Yes.
I was in the state Senate when then Governor John Bell Edwards signed off and expanded Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, tens of thousands of people were added to the rolls.
Literally.
Rural hospitals started opening.
Mm-hmm.
The reverse is also true, isn't it?
It is. It is.
So when we think about those rural hospitals who, and we've heard say, oh, we're not going to cut, but you're going to take away the ability for people to be able to fund these. Hospitals are going to close because they've got to pay the bills. They've got to pay physicians. They have to be able to provide the basic safety nets of having a clean, good, operable hospital. In rural areas, they won't be able to survive. What does that mean to those people that are living in rural areas who can't just simply jump in a car and drive 50, 60 miles to a hospital?
If you have a stroke, you have a fixed amount of time to get that stroke taken care of before it leaves you permanently disabled or dead. There are certain treatments you can only do within a window of time. So if you live too far away, even though we have the ability to fix you and to keep you whole and to keep you healthy and keep you alive, you don't get that because you have to drive too far. This is a matter of life and death. And the second thing I'll remind everybody here is that our public medical schools here, LSU Shreveport and LSU New Orleans, are substantially supported through federal funds. Not just the services they provide in clinical settings and hospital settings, but the way they actually pay for teaching our kids to be doctors of the future. So if you don't want to have a public medical school here in Louisiana that can make the doctors that are going to take care of us forever, allow these cuts to go through. If you don't want people to be able to not just live, but live without disability, because they don't have to drive 45 minutes to an hour to get treatment that's time dependent for them to be okay, yeah, cut this Medicare and Medicaid.
What happens in the case of National Institute of Health, NIH funding? You know, I did a roundtable several months ago where I had our local universities, Tulane, to come and sit and let's talk about what this means, because every dollar that's put into the National Institute of Health research, we get some $5 in hard costs returned. But what can't be measured is what happens when we're finding cures to dreaded diseases. What happens when we're finding maybe not a cure, but ways to lessen the blow. When you start cutting the National Institute of Health and pulling back those dollars, where our noted research scientists are in the labs every day trying to find a cure. I mentioned a second ago, curative versus preventive. You take away NIH, you're going to be more on the curative because preventive will go out the window because you won't have a chance to find a way to prevent it. Now you got to figure out a way to slow it down, because you take away the critical research that in fact does save lives. A message that I said very clearly to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when he was before my committee last week, and I'll delve into that a little bit more. Talk about the value and the importance of National Institute of Health research and the funds that go along with it.
So I'm going to tell a little story to try and break it down for people, because most people sort of, their eyes glaze over when you talk about science, scientific method, and the hardcore nerds that are doing research. But the Human Genome Project was a project started in the Obama administration, where they said, we understand that our DNA are the building blocks of our body. They're the way that all the proteins in our body get made. They're the way that our cells understand where to live and die and how to make friends and do their jobs. If we can understand all the different parts of the genome, what is that going to unlock for us? We didn't know what was going to unlock for us, but because of the Human Genome Project, we have a cure for sickle cell disease now. We have treatment for cystic fibrosis now. We have treatment for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, Jerry's Kids disease, which is universally fatal, but now is actually a chronic condition because we can do something with it. Basic science research done back during the Obama administration has led to drugs that save lives right now. And that's what I tell people. When you take away the ability for scientists and physician scientists and people that are in a lab to do their jobs, you're not just depriving yourself right now, you're depriving yourself of a tomorrow that could be better than today?
The Secretary of Health,
Yes.
Robert F. Kennedy, was before my Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Health last week.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to question him.
Mm-hmm.
I presented to him with some hardcore facts on grants that he and his agency had cut. And I asked about the cuts that he had done to HIV research. His answer to me was, we have been putting money after money after money behind this research, and we still don't have a cure. I said, so wait, let me make sure I'm hearing you right, Mr. Secretary. You're saying because there is not a cure for AIDS or HIV, that you're going to take the money away. Sir, that doesn't make sense to me. We don't have a cure for cancer either, but we're working every day. Are you suggesting? He said, well, we're going to cut that money for HIV testing because nothing's come out of it. He said, and I said, wait a minute, there are people that are living because of this research. He said, show me one. I said, I'm offended, sir.
You can show you millions.
That you are the Secretary of Health, and you are asking me to show you one person that's alive because of NIH funding for research for HIV. There are millions of them. Because while the virus hadn't been cured, there's medication that's been found. There's medication that has helped. That's all been done by research, right?
Research. So, what's a challenge right now is we're living in an age where people want to govern and make policy based on vibes and how they feel about things rather than the data about it. For every person that has HIV that's positive, but suppresses that to the point where you can't detect the virus in their body, that's one person that's not out there spreading it to somebody else.
And a life that lives.
That lives. The second thing is that what we're doing with the ability of our agencies to spread good information and protect people from unnecessary diseases, it is a shame that we had a measles outbreak here in Louisiana and South Texas that didn't have to happen. If we keep our populations above 90-95% vaccinated, then the folks that are too young to be vaccinated will be protected just along with everybody else that took the vaccine. And that meant that people didn't die of infected central nervous systems and measles in a horrible death that could be prevented. We're almost a victim of our success, Congressman.
Yeah.
Because nobody has seen how terrible that disease is, because we've almost eradicated it, they think it's not important. Well, just because you don't see how terrible something is, your hubris should not tell you it's not important. And I feel that some of our leaders are letting their hubris and vibes overrun the science of what we know.
Let's talk real quickly about, because I can talk to you forever about this stuff, obviously.
Yes,
but let's talk about, as I often mention, you go into certain neighborhoods and you see a person dragging half of their body because they've had blood pressure that went unchecked, that developed into heart disease or stroke. These things don't have to happen, do they?
No. I look at things like Luther Vandross, one of my favorite singers of all time. He died from the complications of diabetes. That is unconscionable. We have medications that can treat that. And here is a black man that had access to the system that died of something preventable.
I'm gonna hit you with another one because so we talk about blood pressure.
Yeah.
We talk about diabetes.
Yes.
Prostate cancer.
Yes.
Can we save that?
So prostate cancer is a tumor that's very slow growing. Means if you catch it early, there's stuff you can do, not just to preserve your life, but also preserve your
even with those
libido and abilities.
And it all still works.
Abilities, yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Chronic heart disease, it may be hereditary, but does it have to kill you at an early age?
It doesn't have to, but number one, we need to give people the knowledge so they can make good decisions.
That's what we're doing today.
And number two, give people the ability to enact their good decisions. And that's the difference between sort of individual responsibility and public health. You can't solve a public health problem with individual responsibility. Because I may decide that I want to make better choices for my life and health, but if there's no place for me to buy that in my neighborhood or community, how do I enact that?
Right.
I may decide I want to have a better relationship with my physicians, but if there's no physician that takes my type of insurance or my public insurance, how does that help? There is a role for personal responsibility, but there's also a role for public health entities that enable people to enact these personal responsibilities.
And with the discussion that we're having in Washington, those community health clinics that are right in the neighborhood where a person can walk up and get help, they're threatened.
They're threatened. And they're staffed, Congressman, by people that know the communities. So it's not somebody that came from on high that just sort of floated in and tossed out some information here and there. Those communities, health clinics, are staffed by people that are of and about the community. So they know how to talk to the community and relate to people in the community. And that's important too.
Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
Planned Parenthood has been a tool that not just dealing with, I mean, men go to Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way that people can go, women can be in tune with their bodies, have resources to deal with their reproductive freedoms, and so many other things. But somehow I think it's been caught up in this firing squad of those who would want to demonize the services of Planned Parenthood. We saw the Supreme Court
Mm-hmm.
offer a crushing blow.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about what that means and the values of what Planned Parenthood brings to our communities.
So I'm going to talk about women's health in just a minute, but I want to start with the fact that you don't have to agree with 100% of anything for it to have value. And there might be parts of all kinds of programs that are not your particular cup of tea. But it is not reasonable or rational to throw away everything that program does because there's 5% of it you don't like. Now that's sort of,
excellent point.
that's where I'm starting. The second part is that I believe that people are not expendable. And I made this point a little earlier when we talked about sort of healthcare in general, but women that get pregnant deserve the ability to live and live healthy. If you don't have the ability to go and get things that you need to ensure that process, you're treating those women like they're expendable. And I don't know that there's a political ideology that says we should do that.
Nor should they. Not in America, right?
Not in America.
Not in this country.
Mm-hmm.
With the riches of the rich that we have, with the technology that we have, with the brains that we have like yours.
Right here.
No one should be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
No one should be homeless. And no one should be without health care.
Yep.
Yet in America, we find these discussions still happening every day. Rapid round.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what happens in the case of the person who sees themselves as lost.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do? You got 988.
Yep.
You got resources.
Yep.
You got your pastor if you're so inclined. You got your school counselor. You got your teacher. There's always somebody you can talk to, even if it's just a friend.
Yes.
Someone's at home and they're thinking they're by themselves. Tell them they're not.
We see you and you're ours. The beauty of this 300 plus year old culture in New Orleans is that we understand who we are and whose we are. And we do that not just by relating to one another, but by practicing our rituals. When our Mask and Mardi Gras Indians sit down and sew together, they're not just making beautiful art through those suits, they're connecting across generations. So those kids understand that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. When we parade with our social aid and pleasure clubs, we give people the assurance that if something happens to the breadwinner in their family, somebody's going to care about them, make sure they're buried with dignity, and take care of those left behind. I really underscore those things because those feel like social extra things, but that's the glue that make all these other programs that we have available to our listeners right now work. You care about getting help when there's something that you're getting help for.
If there were 10 people in the room,
Mm-hmm.
how many of them were dealing with something?
All 10?
Bam. If there are 10 people in the room, how many of them probably need to see a doctor and they didn't?
Oh gosh, 9 or 10. Because there's always that one good one.
When we think about a city like New Orleans, we like to have a little fun on this podcast.
We do.
So in this city, we like to party.
Mm-hmm.
You've been king. Now will be the king of 2 different organizations. Look, it's hard enough to be king of one. I'm a member of Zulu. I'm a member of Namtak. I used to be a member of Endymion. Mm-hmm. These elections are serious.
Yes.
You won one,
mm-hmm.
and you won 2.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what's the magic and how the heck, with the schedule as busy as yours, dovetailing into the fact that New Orleans, we like to have fun,
mm-hmm.
a very acclaimed and educated and socially conscious person. How the heck you get 2 real quick? Because I want to get back to the other stuff.
So you don't have to pick. And I think to be a good physician, you have to be a good member of your community. It doesn't do me any good to be this well-trained, great guy that nobody knows or has access to. It's the biggest pride in my life that my friends can pick up the phone and call me and say, I heard something that sounds crazy. Can you help me understand this?
Good stuff. I like to eat oysters on a half shell.
I do. Me too.
I like fried oyster po' boys.
Yes.
I like to eat things I probably shouldn't eat. In New Orleans, we probably have cholesterols that are a little higher than others. Help the person out there understand that with moderation, you can enjoy the finer things in New Orleans and our cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you do it within moderation, exercise, diet, and care for yourself. You don't have to cut those things out, do you?
No, I tell people you don't get any extra points for suffering. A lot of people really lean into this sort of, I'm gonna not just do right, but I'm gonna do right in a way that's just hard and terrible and grind it out. You deserve joy, and you deserve things that make your spirit sing. Now, part of being an adult is sometimes paying a bill over going to that movie that you wanted to go to, but missing all the movies doesn't serve you either. I like how you talk about balance. And just as hard as we are on ourselves for being responsible, it's just as hard as we are on ourselves for finding joy.
2 quick anniversaries.
Sure.
You mentioned the anniversary of Katrina.
20 years.
Give me a 10-second. Where were we? What did we learn? How do we do better? Maybe 20 seconds.
Sure.
It's 20 years since Katrina. You've seen the best, you've seen the ugliest, and you see the bright sun and shine of the people of Louisiana and New Orleans specifically who are resilient.
Yes.
Tell us just a quick bite for those who may not have understood what happened. 20 years later, Katrina.
Katrina was an exploitation of the most vulnerable people in our community. And it turns out the most vulnerable people in our community are the most vital to our culture. The folks that had the least amount of resources to withstand missing paycheck after paycheck or figure out where they were going to live when their house was completely washed away were the people that made the delicious food that make all the tourists come here, or the people that made the music that everyone wanted to listen to. So what I lean into, what I learned from Katrina, is that nobody is expendable. The second thing I learned from Katrina is that technology can be our friend. I told you that was the first time I text messaged somebody because we couldn't have calls going through. And I realized that was a way for me to connect with somebody without taking a bunch of their time. And that's when I learned the importance of the electronic medical record. All my records and files were stuck in my office at Children's Uptown. And until I could use my medical ID to get past the blockade of the city and get some boxes out of my office, there were patients I cared for that I just didn't know and remember all their medications and all their needs. With electronic medical records now, I have the ability to see it wherever I am.
20 years later. We've learned some things.
We've learned some things.
And we're better than we were.
We are.
Real quick, let's end on a real good one.
Yes.
Essence Festival, 32 years this year.
Yes.
I was a young member of the New Orleans City Council. Mark was a young mayor of the city of New Orleans when we brought in the very first Essence Festival that we believed at that time was going to be a one-year festival. 32 years later. Who's your favorite artist? Who are you looking to see?
Oh my goodness. I love live music, period. So my favorite artist is going to be the one I never heard of and never thought I liked. Every time I go to a music festival, no matter how big or small, I discover somebody new that I can't live without.
The beauty of Essence is we call it a party with a purpose.
Yes.
There's great music.
Yes.
There's arts and crafts.
Yes.
There's empowerment seminars. There are powerful people like yourself coming to talk and have discussions about real life issues for the people of Louisiana and our world. Yes, that's what makes America tick. We have been with the outstanding Dr. Scholas, who is a MD, PhD. He's a king of 2 organizations, and he is a culturally, consciously, civically grounded individual who has been well-trained, well-educated, and teaching us how to take care of ourselves and to be a better version of ourselves. Tonight, we've learned a little bit more about what makes America tick. Join us for our next podcast. My man.
I appreciate it.
You make it easy, brother.
Oh, look, I like
you make it easy.
I'm a certified yapper. That's what the kids say now.
All right. How was that?
Yapper.